This is the Powered Up Podcast, show 182.
Most important thing is for them to know how much I care about them, because it's one of the only times I get each child one-on-one for 20 minutes. So I make sure I end every conference with, I care about you so much. You're an amazing student. I'm so proud of how much you've grown this year. You're working so incredibly hard. And, I'm going to keep being here to cheer you on.
Welcome to a real-world education with insight and advice from teachers in the game, where current and former educators reveal what truly sets apart the great teachers and what it takes to make a positive impact on students. Whether you're in pre-service learning, new to the game, or a seasoned veteran, this is the show for you. You'll leave feeling inspired to take action because we are powering education by empowering you.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Ken Ehrman, host of the Powered Up Podcast, and I'm here with another fantastic conversation with the 2024 Illinois State Teacher of the Year, Dr. Rachael Mahmood. It was an engaging, exciting, energetic conversation. For my fellow fifth grade teacher listeners, we had two fifth grade teachers talking tonight, so we maybe talked a little bit specifically about that, but honestly, it was a conversation that I think can apply to any teacher of any subject area, any grade level. We talk about what makes Rachael's class exciting and dynamic, how she builds a culture of learning, how she incorporates projects into the units and the concepts that she teaches, and most importantly, how she makes her students feel connected, feel appreciated, and feel loved in the classroom. And she really focuses on how she makes parents very aware of that and the role that parents can play in supporting their child's education. It was a conversation rich from the culture of the room to the learning of the room and everywhere in between. And I'm very grateful and fortunate to have had this time together. So as we jump into this conversation, I hope you enjoy it. I hope you're able to take away a lot of strategies. And if you haven't before, please rate us on where you listen, whether that be iTunes, Spotify, or another application. Leave us comments, leave us feedback, and share this with as many teachers as you can to help us reach as many educators so that they can hear the stories of the amazing guests that I have on the show. Enjoy. Hi, Rachael. Welcome to the Powered Up Podcast. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great.
Thank you so much for being here. So kick things off for us nice and simple. Please officially introduce yourself. Let us know where you are coming from and give us a snapshot of your career in education.
Oh, wow. Well, that was a lot of questions at once. So I'll take them piece by piece. And if I forget any, you could just remind me which ones I forgot. My name is Dr. Rachael Mahmood, and I'm the 2024 Illinois Teacher of the Year for the state of Illinois. But for the national cohort, I'm the 2025 Illinois Teacher of the Year. So not to be confused at all, I'll just claim both the years. I'm cool with that. But actually, we're about to roll into our finalists right now for the 2025 Illinois Teacher of the Year. So it can be a little confusing. I'm an elementary school teacher. I teach in a very large suburb just outside of Chicago called Aurora, Illinois. And my school district is like 28,000 students, or some absurdly large number like that. We have over 30 schools. And this year I've had the wonderful opportunity to be on a 1-year sabbatical, traveling across the state, doing keynotes, doing presentations, doing this special dialogue called the World Cafe with educators as well as stakeholders in education all across the state. So it's been incredibly affirming.
Excellent. What grade do you teach, or what grades have you taught?
I've taught 4th grade for 7 years, and I taught 5th grade for 12 years. And then 1 year of a sabbatical to put that all together. If you're a math person, 20 years in teaching.
All right. Hardest question of the night. What's better, 4th or 5th grade?
Oh my gosh. I actually prefer middle of 4th. Like, you pick them up after like winter break, and then we drop them off right before winter break of 5th grade. Is that an option? Can we do that?
I mean, you're a teacher of the year. Maybe you can make that. Maybe you can make that happen, right? No, I can see what you mean. Although I'm a former 5th grade teacher as well. And is 5th grade the last year of elementary school for you?
It is.
Okay, so the only caveat to that, as I will say, is the end of the year as a 5th grade teacher typically involves a lot of extra field trips and celebrations and ceremonies. So the month of May is usually a very relaxing month as a fifth grade teacher. So that would be a little difficult to give up. I don't know about that. But
yeah, you know what? You're right. I definitely am partial to the fifth grade transition. I love being like that last teacher of elementary school. You get like the last moment for like them to memorialize their entire elementary educational experience with you, and so I am partial to to teaching fifth grade. And they have a lot of fun activities because it is their last year. So
on that idea, let's think about someone that possibly, as a child themselves, or their children have not really gone through elementary school yet. How could you explain to them the value and the importance of what elementary school can do for a child in terms of the way you just said, memorializing? I really like, because when a child has a positive experience for 5 to 6 years in an elementary school in a community that really solidifies that, I don't think there's anything more special, especially as a fifth grade teacher, like you said, seeing them memorialize that experience themselves, but also when you have the parents that maybe it's their second or it's their third and it's their last going through that elementary school. And as a parent, they've been in that school for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. What is that? Can you put words to what that is? That intangible thing that we see that maybe not everyone gets?
I think elementary school is like a family situation, right? It really sets the tone for how students and parents are going to experience their entire school experience. And so I believe that when we create a foundation that's built in love and creativity and embracing all the diversity and all the wonderful uniqueness of our families and of our students, we really have the opportunity to create that trajectory of like, you're going to love school, right? And it's going to be an amazing experience for you. And we also help the parents through that experience as well. And so I think that you're right. Like, I've had parents that have been in our school for 20 years, and I've seen like their last fifth grader go through and graduate from elementary school. And like the parents are just as emotional as the fifth graders. And fifth graders are pretty emotional on the last day of school, especially the girls. There's a lot of tears and crying, like they're never going to see us again. And some of them, they do. They walk out of the door and you never see them again. And that's really hard. I think fifth grade teachers too, we're at like the peak of our love for our students when they walk out the door and you don't know if you're ever going to see them again. You just pray that you create a relationship that one day they'll come back and let you know that they're okay, they made it. But yeah, I think that it's a place of love. I know it's why I choose to be an elementary school teacher. It's because there's a lot of love, there's a lot of hugs, there's a lot of support. It's all about familia and caring. And I don't know if I caught what you were looking for exactly, but
you did.
I think there's a lot of emotions wrapped up into it. And like, these are families that are giving you their babies, right? And they're trusting that we're going to take care of them and that we're going to love them and we're going to be there to wipe the tears and band-aid the boo-boos and also like carry them forward. And I guess I consider that to be an incredible privilege.
I completely agree. And something that I've tried to help new teachers understand, especially elementary, just because if it's typically a self-contained class, the kids are with you all day, that the communication with parents is so important, because Monday through Friday, those kids are going to spend more time with you than they do with their parents when you subtract sleep out of the equation. You know, the time that they have in the morning before school and the time that they have after school before they go to bed is less than the time they spend in school, especially if you factor in activities that they're going to. So they're going to sports or instruments or different things. And I think that sometimes communication, you know, we always have a million things to do, but communication, I think, sometimes can be overlooked in the sense of the responsibility we carry to communicate with parents. So what are some strategies or what are some things that you've done over the past that you feel has improved your communication with parents, or something that you have done that's really effective to kind of create that bond and that partnership between you and the parents to support the students that you have?
Absolutely. I mean, the connection that I have with a child's family is one of the most important connections to me. And one of the things that I really try to always keep in the center of my mind is that while I might be the expert on education, the family is the expert on the child. And so this partnership doesn't work if it's not a partnership. But something I've become even more and more intentional in, something that I've always felt in my core, but didn't have the words before to describe it, is just pouring unconditional positive regard onto my students. I listened to a podcast, Jennifer Gonzalez, Cult of Pedagogy. She had somebody on there and they were talking about unconditional positive regard. Like, how much do we explicitly tell our students and their families, I love you and I care about you. And there is absolutely nothing you're ever going to do that's going to make that go away. And I've always felt that way about my students and their families. But since hearing that, I've become so much more intentional in saying it to people, to saying it to my students, to saying it to their families. Good job, mom. So proud of you. You've raised an amazing kid. I love your kid. I'm going to advocate for your kid. I've even gone as far as on curriculum night telling my parents, there is nobody that I love more in this school than your child. There is nobody that I will prioritize before your child. And hearing that from your teacher, it's like the best communication. Cause like I always say at parent teacher conferences, like as a parent myself, I go to parent teacher conferences to find out how much my own children's teachers love them. Right. There's no data you're going to dump on me in this moment that's going to change the way that I parent. Right. But how do we do that for our parents as well? How do we take these small moments that we have one-on-one with parents? What is the most essential message that you send? It's not what tier your child is on MTSS or, on their iReady scores. It's not where they fell on like their state testing. It's, I love your child. I will advocate for your child. And if you can even throw in a good job, mom or dad, give them a nice pat on the back or a hug and tell them that they're doing a great job. I mean, you can just see everybody in the room just, they just stand a little taller. They leave a little happier. And I only have that 20 minutes to make sure that they feel incredibly good. And so I don't waste 1 minute on anything that's not going to be filling the buckets of my children who I make come to the conferences and their families.
Yeah, I want to hear more about that, but I couldn't agree more, both as a teacher and a parent myself. My oldest is in first grade now, and so we're starting to experience that other side, and that's what we do want to hear. And my wife and I are so grateful right now. We love our son's teacher, and he loves her, and we know that she shows him that as well. And I do want to hear about how he's succeeding socially and academically, but I still want to know that she knows him personally and cares about him as a person, and it makes all the difference in the world. And a couple of years into my career, I changed the way that we did back to school night. I stopped talking about the curriculum and I stopped talking about all that stuff. I let them know what it was and that they would receive communication throughout the year, but I spent the time just focusing on how I was going to make their child feel special and have a fun year, and what I would look for in support from the parents and what they could expect from me in supporting them. And it's just so important for everyone to hear it. And the other thing that really stuck out to me was being explicit, making sure like you said, you say it directly to the students and the parents. And I think just not even with this, being explicit is something that we don't do enough in education. If you are trying a new way of instruction, be explicit with the kids of, this is what we're trying. This is why we're trying it. I don't know if it's going to work or not, right? Just being explicit in what we're doing and why we're doing it makes all the difference in the world. And I think it helps create a lot of buy-in with students and with parents when we're trying things. But talk more about conferences and why you involve the students and how you involve them.
Well, yeah, I was going to also actually, before I get into that,
Please.
I just wanted to make one comment about the curriculum night too. I've also stopped talking about the curriculum. I talk about some
What
of
a
the fun
terrible name,
projects we're
curriculum
going to
night.
do. I talk about like, we're going to make a movie with a green screen and we're going to have a courtroom trial and we're going to make these clothespin dolls. And like, I just get the parents excited about like the projects, and like your kid's going to fall in love with coming to school. So on curriculum night, I share 3 goals. My curriculum presentation is actually organized around 3 goals. The first goal is your child will love coming to school every single day. I'm going to ensure it. I'm going to get to know your child. I'm going to understand what motivates them. I'm going to create our classroom, redesign our classroom to be a place that they fall in love with. And then I tell them about all the engaging projects. I tell them about, like I show them my sense of humor. I show how much love I have for students. Like that's how I'm going to do it. Right. And then my second goal is that your child will be challenged with high expectations and supported in every way to achieve them. And then I talk a little bit about how that looks in my classroom and how the support system looks and how much they're going to see their child grow over the course of the year. I make promises like your child will start brushing their own teeth in the morning and like doing their homework, and they're going to be super excited and they're going to be motivated. You're going to see it. And I explain how I transfer that motivation from my heart to their heart. And then the third thing is I will communicate with you, and I will advocate for your child now and always. And I talk about when you come through my classroom, it's not just a 1-year relationship. I will be there to help you navigate middle school. I will be your advocate when you get to high school. Reach back out to me when your child wants to become a teacher and they can volunteer in my room. Like I will help them with their college essays, whatever it is. I will be there as an advocate to support your family and to support your child. And I kind of explain how I do that throughout the year. I'm a big person, like I'll snap pictures of students like doing amazing things throughout the day, and I send it right away to the parents, right to their cell phones. I have like a lot of different ways that I communicate with parents like in the moment, like and get the kids excited about it too. Like, can you send a picture to my mom? I just got an A on this paper, or I just colored this really nice, or just different things like that. And how good it feels as a parent to like
what specifically
messages.
are you using for communication?
I use all kinds of stuff. Mostly I just use text messages. I use Google Voice.
Okay.
In my school, a majority of the parents just communicate via text messages, and I've had a lot of luck just being available via text. I have a Google Voice number. I let them know that like this is my on time for my phone number and this is my off time, like when I'll be responding to text messages and stuff. But for the community that I work in, that has been the most successful. And has made me feel incredibly close, and my parents feel close to me too, that they can just send a text and say so-and-so's having a bad day, and I'm like, emoji back like I got you, I got your kid, and we don't have to make it like a big email like dear Mrs.
I love that. And just to clarify for any listeners that have never heard of Google Voice, she is not handing out her personal cell phone number.
No.
So if you have a Google account with your school, which you likely do, and if you don't, even if you just have a personal Google account, you can create a phone number associated with your Google account. And it's an app that you can have on your phone that allows you to text and call. And it does not associate with your cell phone number in any way. And you can actually do it right from the Chrome browser too, which is nice. You can text and call from there too. So I think that's a fantastic way. It's not something I did only because when I left the classroom to be a coach, it wasn't really prevalent, or I wasn't aware of it at least. But I think creating those lines of communication are so important. As a teacher myself, I would always send out an email on Monday-ish with kind of like just the business breakdown of the week. And I told my parents, emails are business. And it was just like, here's what's going on. Here's what you need to know. Here's how you can support. And a lot of times it would just say like math, nothing, right? There's nothing important for the week. And then I had a class Facebook page, and that was for fun. I told them if they want to see pictures, they want to see videos, they want to see posts, they go there for fun. My school district has Seesaw now, which is a great communication tool that can allow for you to communicate directly to parents as well as to showcase a lot of student work. But the thing that I love most is that you talked about the boundaries. This is my on time, this is my off time. And I think that's so important for teachers. Well, one, their well-being, but two, for parents as well. I think it's important for them to see us setting boundaries and to kind of think about that for their own students. And I told parents, like, I leave school, I get there early, but I leave school about 4 o'clock, which is about 10, 15 minutes after your child leaves. And I don't really check email after that. I would say if you get stuck with homework, which there wasn't a lot of, or studying, or anything is causing frustration, you just send an email and say, Mr. Ehrman, Johnny's not coming in with his homework tomorrow. You don't have to tell me why. I won't ask why. That's it. Case closed. And I think it's just really beneficial for everyone to have those healthy boundaries, because I think it just sets a good precedent for everyone involved.
Yeah, I do. And I mean, parents would text me outside of the hours, but I just kind of like have like, these are the hours I'm most likely to get back to you. If I can, I will, I don't know. I really see myself as an extension of my children's family for that year. And so I really do try my best to be there for them when I can. And if they can feel that love, then it works out for all of us. And honestly, I've never had any parent in the last 9 years that I've been using the Google Voice number ever take advantage of it in any way that that made me feel uncomfortable. I've never had to change the number because anyone abused it. I've never had parents reach out in any negative ways. So I've been incredibly lucky that, and I really do believe when parents know that we truly love their children, we can truly love them, but parents don't always know that, right? So that's why I think it's so important that we're explicit. But yeah.
I agree. Okay, so back to conferences and involving students. How and why?
Well, in my classroom, pretty much everything that I do has to have an element of student agency. So conferences included, right? I'm not like a big, I don't have a lot of roles for parents in my classroom. Like, let's say that. Like, I'm not expecting you to do the study guide with your child. I'm not expecting you to monitor their homework. I'm not expecting you to practice their math facts with them. That's just not the way I teach. I take all of that responsibility on myself, and I create the relationship with the child to get them to a point where they can do a lot of those things independently. And we're so lucky with all the computer programs we have. I make interactive study guides. I use apps to practice facts and things like that. I monitor and reward and encourage and whatnot. So really my goal is to get them independent, right? And so the parent's role is a lot different in the way I teach and manage my classroom. I let parents do the parenting and I worry about the education. So I don't really need to say things to parents like your child needs to read more or things like that, because I take that on my responsibility to figure out ways to make that happen. And so if the students are going to be in the driving seat of their education, and that's my goal, their agency to change the way they interact with school, how they feel about school, and how they take ownership of their learning, then they're the most important person at the conference. And I've definitely had a few times where parents couldn't come and kids walked up to the school and did their conference with me one-on-one. And that's amazing. That's what I encourage. If your parents can't come to the conference, you come. And I think for a fifth grade, like that's doable, right? A lot of my students are walkers anyways. They walk to school every day and walk home. They would walk up for their conference. They would get their 20 minutes with me. But I do student-led conferences. So the students kind of create a portfolio. They go through reflection questions. They're up there presenting their conference at the smartboard of their portfolio. They make a slide deck. And they're driving the conference, and the parents and I are more of the audience. Support teachers that attend also are in an audience role. Our job is to coach them through that process of being up there and sharing their glows, sharing their grows, helping them think through their plan that they came up with to achieve their grows. So it's really more of a showcase for the parents to see how much they've grown in that first few months, for me to be able to see like where they are self-assessing themselves. And really, again, how else can I support you? That's the way I talk to my students at every conference. And then their parents, good job. You're doing a good job. Look at how amazing your kid is. Look at how much they've gotten done. Look at what they're proud of,
So much of what you're saying is completely in sync with who I was and how I ran my fifth grade classroom. We would have been kick-ass grade partners.
Oh my gosh. I would have loved it. Are you also very project-based? Because I do so many projects.
Yes.
I joke. I do not teach units. I teach project to project.
All right, we're digging into this. Are you self-contained?
Yes.
Okay. Math or reading? What do you want to dive into? What do you want to dive deep into right now?
Reading.
Okay. So give us an idea of what a single reading class would look like, or maybe a span of 2 or 3 classes if things kind of move in chunks that way.
Yeah.
What does learning look like in your class?
100% everything moves in chunks, because no project can just be done in a day.
Right.
So, for example, one of my very famous units is the mock trial. So, day one, we're talking about our experiences with the judicial system. We're talking about trying to see how much we understand about the judicial system. What are all the different parts of the judicial system? Some of my students have been in court before for custody cases or for other things. And so we watch a lot of videos on like all the different like jobs in a courtroom, things like that. Then I tell them that we're actually going to have a courtroom trial. And so they have to learn the jobs, they have to learn the parts of a courtroom. And they all, after they do that, they have to fill out a job application. Hardest question on the job application, what's your address? Every time. Or phone number. They're like, it's in my phone. Can I go get it? I'm like, no, you have to have it memorized. So they fill out a job application, what jobs they want to have. Do they want to be a lawyer prosecution, lawyer defense? They can also choose to be a witness, the defendant. They can choose to be a court reporter, jury member. I'm the judge. That they cannot choose. So then we start reading the book, and the book is about this fox. It's actually, the name of the book is called The Tale of the Tricky Fox. But for the purposes of our court case, he's on trial for trickery. And so it's the case of Thomas Ricky Fox, T. Ricky, get it, against the state of Illinois. And he's on trial for tricking 3 old ladies. And so they read the book. And then according to their jobs, they have to think about, how they're going to execute their job. So they're marking up the text. The lawyers are coming up with questions in sequential order. The witnesses are practicing sequencing events in a book, and then they're kind of memorizing those events and being able to respond to questions, even questions that maybe they don't know the answer to because it's not in the book. So they have to make inferences, right? The jury is kind of looking at both sides. They're reading the book and seeing like, what are some arguments that the defense is going to make? What are some arguments the prosecution is going to make? So they kind of are doing like the compare and contrast, right? And so there's all these different skills that everyone's working on. And then we actually have the court trial. The opening statements are like 5-sentence paragraphs with like a hook. A topic sentence like, today will prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the fox is guilty of tricking 3 old ladies. And then like 3 main points that they're going to make in their argument. And then like a conclusion sentence. And then the other person gives their opening statements. And then each witness gets called up, and each lawyer is questioning one witness. So the prosecution will question the first old lady, then the defense will cross-examine, and then the prosecution will redirect. And then we go to the second old lady, same. And then the third old lady. And then the prosecution stands up and they have to say that they rest because they don't have any more witnesses. Then the defense stands up. They call Brother Fox as a character witness. And then they interview him first, and the prosecution cross-examines. And then they redirect with their top 3 questions. And then they call the defendant up, and he comes up and he gets interviewed. Then they sit down, and then the defense rests. And then they give their closing statements. And then the jury goes out and deliberates. And then they come back in, and they hand me, the jury foreman hands me like the piece of paper, and I open it up, and I'm like, will you defendant please rise? And they're all like standing up, and then I'll ask them how they find the defendant, and then the jury foreman will like say what the conclusion is, and then they'll be like, the court will erupt, and I got my gavel, and I'm like, order in the court, everyone sits down, and then we have to do the sentencing. So I'll take a sentencing recommendation from the jury. And so if they find him guilty, then they come up with these crazy sentences, And so afterwards, we debrief from the whole thing. So then I asked them about their experience, what was more convincing, using facts or opinions. from the text? How did they draw conclusions to decide the guilt, not guilt? During the court trial, they're actually filling out like a listening sheet. Everybody is, so that everyone's focused on like the points that are being made. So it's like the listening part, the speaking part, when they have these speaking roles, compare and contrast, drawing conclusions, asking questions. It's literally every reading strategy right out there. And then at the end, everything that I teach has to have some element of social justice. So at the end, we talk about the sentencing and like what are some of the bias that's associated with a fox. And we also talk about the sentencing and does the sentencing match the crime, and what can happen when bias gets involved and how this can play out in everyday life. And we talk about, would you ever want to be a lawyer? Would you ever want to work in a court? What would you do like if you ever had to go to a court trial? And then we do like the real life application as part of the debrief as well. So that whole thing could take like a week, right? Because there's like preparation days and debriefing days. A trial, usually we try to do it in one day because the kids come dressed up. The old ladies got wigs on. It's like hundreds day.
So a question that I will commonly get when I share something similar to that, not that I've done that exact project, is how do you have time for that and still teach everything you're supposed to teach?
Yeah. So everything that I'm supposed to teach is in that unit. So I've done a bunch of different things. So I've done the mock trial every single year for the last 19 years. So depending on what grade I've taught, sometimes I build it into guided reading time so that like we're practicing all the skills and we're reading like the book as a guided reading book. Sometimes I build it into the end of the year, but usually I look at the curriculum and then I try to figure out a project that matches that curriculum. So the Native American unit, we build a Native American museum. My science unit on matter, I created a whole like CSI investigation, like matter matters in CSI. And like we had a park vandalism and there was like evidence. And I took all the standards that like they have to do for properties of matter. And I had like them doing it on evidence that was left at the crime scene. And then they do a detective report about who they're going to arrest at the end based on like profiles of people that were in the area. And so, you know, like they're using the properties of matter and then they're deducing like who the profiles of the people are. And then they try to figure out that we read a book about Team Moon. It's a problem solution book. Like every chapter is like a challenge and how they addressed it in the Apollo 11 landing. We did a green screen movie broadcast about that book. So it is the curriculum, right? But it's kind of like I look at it and then I figure out like what's a project that will ground all of this. And I actually start every unit with a project. Like we're going to make this green screen movie and it's going to be a news broadcast and you guys are going to learn how to use WeVideo and you're going to figure out how to like change the backgrounds and edit and you're going to write a speech. In order to do that, we have to read this book. That's part of our curriculum. And yeah. So
isn't it awesome how much easier green screening is now than it was 6 years ago?
Yeah.
So I had a similar experience when I first started fifth grade. I was reading in math. I taught reading in my homeroom and math to all the classes. And then we moved to being self-contained. And in Pennsylvania, one of the standards and then one of our units is related to Earth's biomes. And what I adopted was pretty much PowerPoint slides on the biomes, on the animals and plants. And one of the most important parts of the units was adaptations. So learning environmental pressures, what causes those adaptations, how adaptations feed into evolution. And looking at this, I thought to myself, well, I don't really care about the bird that's on this slide and the adaptations it has. I would be more interested in this animal. And so I thought, well, just because I'm interested in it doesn't mean my students are going to be interested in it. And so what I did is I just transitioned it into them working in teams. They had to research each biome. They had to learn the weather, the climate, the geography, locations on Earth that this biome existed, 2 plants, 2 animals, and what are adaptations that those animals and plants have, and what would have been environmental pressures that caused that. And then they had to create a documentary. We would usually spend a day watching an episode of Steve Irwin for some motivation for bringing some comedy and humor and enjoyment into the documentary. And similarly, this is like 2016, 2018. I built their video skills up. So like the first biome, they just had to do 3 video clips and edit them together. And then by the last couple, they were doing green screen and different things like that. But they had to research and write a script before they could create the broadcast. So my next question is, when you've had these ideas for these projects and it's the first time you're trying it, what is your approach to trying this new project to kind of feel out how it's going to fit? And what advice do you have for teachers that want to try to incorporate more of a project focus in a unit and they're trying it for the first time?
I mean, I think that just like anything you're trying for the first time, it's not going to be great. I remember I was trying to do the food chain. And so I decided that I would start with like these pictures of these dead eagles. And I was like, why are all the eagles dying? And then like I did like a backwards thing. Well, like the kids had to infer like, why are they dying? Well, maybe it was something that they ate. And I was trying to show how chemicals from a river would like then infect the plants, which would then infect these fish, would then like the eagles would eat the fish, and then these eagles were being found dead. And so they had to work backwards through the food chain to understand that not only is energy transferred through a food chain, but pollutants can also be. And it like traced back to like this place in California where they were having like runoff from the fields. The funny thing is like it didn't work out. Like I had it all lined up. And so like as they learned about each piece, like I released another clue, but like they were not getting it, right? And so I had to like spoon feed them some more information. I had to like maybe just tell them a few times. And I tried it a few times and it was just kind of a clunky project. And so I ended up abandoning it. And it, I think I tried it like 2 years and it was like, okay, I'm not making any improvements on this. This is not really, in theory, it sounded amazing.
Right. It was the student's fault. It wasn't yours.
Obviously, no. But like I spent so much time designing this like web quest kind of thing and having like pieces unlock and and so I think that my first piece of advice is to be creative and think to yourself, like, what would actually make you want to learn this? I try to give my students nothing that I wouldn't want to do as a student. I'm not a big worksheet person. In fact, on Twitter, a lot of my hashtags are like ditch the worksheets. Most of my students suffer from verbal vomit, writing constipation. So like I don't do a lot of like heavy writing unless it actually is like something that we are writing. Like we write these stories like we're stuck in a snow globe, and then I make little snow globes with the students and their bodies inside of like the glass jars and stuff. But like I don't like do like, I'm always like, think about it as a project. What would make me excited to come to work? What would make me excited as a student? What's going to keep them engaged the whole time? What would be fun? And so I start from there, and then I try to build in like all the strategies. Like, what am I actually teaching here? What are they going to walk away with? And I try to think about not only the skills and standards I'm supposed to be teaching, but I also try to think about like, what real life skill are they taking from this? Are they going to learn what lawyers do? Are they going to learn what engineers do? Are they going to design something, create something, build something? Will they learn some element of social justice or community activism? What's going to make them feel like this is actually important? And then when you try it, I would say like, it's never going to be perfect the first time, or the second time, or even the third time. Like we pull out the same worksheet. Sometimes we're like, oh man, I didn't fix that typo from last year. I meant to do that, but, just put yourself out there and try it, because I have found that being a project-based teacher has made me stay in love with teaching all these years. I'm not as burnt out because I'm also excited about everything we're learning about and everything that we're doing. And I feel like when I'm excited and I'm having fun, the kids feel that and they feel the same way. And everybody learns easier when it's fun.
Definitely.
So even if it's not perfect, learning is definitely happening.
Definitely. And a couple things that you said triggered some thoughts for me. One is when you're thinking about the creative approach, I actually found when I was trying to incorporate projects or just incorporate like other things into the learning, like at a time I had a few robots in my classroom when I was really into STEM, and I was using spheros to explore geometric shapes. Yeah. And so like I found that sometimes I tried to put too much into these projects or activities, and I kind of like put them into two buckets. It was either like, I'm going to use this project, or I'm going to use this tool or this thing that I have to kind of trick them into learning. Like it's just going to make it more fun, but they're actually going to really engage with the content that I'm trying to teach them. Or I'm going to make it really connect to the real world. Like your mock trial is very, real world applicable. But when I tried to do both together, it usually didn't work as well. So it was like I tried to like just divert my mind, like which way am I going when my mind was spinning with creativity. The other thing that I found when trying it, and I applaud what you're saying about just taking the risk, and sometimes you try those projects and they don't work out. And I would say to my students, like, I had this idea, we're going to try this project, we're going to try this activity. And I would say, remember when we did this a couple months ago? They're like, yeah, that was awesome. I was like, okay, well, at one point I said to a class, we're going to try this. And like, now you still do it because it's awesome.
Right.
And then I would say, remember when we did this other project? And they'd be like, no. I'm like, yeah, because I did it 2 years ago and it was terrible. So I don't do it anymore. So it's going to be one of the two. Like, it's going to be one of those two results. But I always found, and I've done the same as a coach working with teachers, when we have these ideas, I actually try to plan as little as possible to see where the students can rise and where they need support. And I have found in the past where I'm trying something big and I plan too much and I scaffold too much, I don't actually know where they could have risen without that. And I find that it sounds silly, it sounds lazy, but like I'll tell the teachers, like, we're going to plan as little as we possibly can and just throw this out there. And then we're going to just piecemeal as we go. And we're going to insert these scaffolds as we go. So then next year you can pre-scaffold these ideas. But like, I want to see where they thrive and where they don't need it. Because if we try to plan too much, we're not going to know where they could have taken this project without giving them that opportunity.
Absolutely. And I think that's where like, I see myself as like planning the experience. Right. And the thing I love about project-based learning is that there is no cap, right? Like every student can take it to the level they can take it to. And I've seen that over and over again with every project. Like there's no like perfect script. Like you can have more details and more facts in it, or you can have less, right? I do a Native American museum every year. Some people like they build out like a legit, like, station with like their entire tribe, and they have multiple artifacts and all the little cards and facts, and like they've like gamified it and all. And some kids, they just build a couple artifacts and have some note cards. But when they start seeing what the other students are doing, when you start like discussing ideas, like, and they start getting creative and then they start like looking around and doing research, like building in like I wouldn't say the scaffolds or the supports, but more like building in the reflection for how they can continuously improve something helps me to see how far they can go. And really there's no cap. So I also find that every year my students tend to go further because I get better at coaching them through the process of how to take themselves further. And I also feel like people ask me all the time, well, how do you modify this for the students that have IEPs or for ELL students? And I feel like in a project, you don't have to modify it. That's the beauty of a project. They take it as far as they can take it. And oftentimes they take it further than if I would have modified it, because they're seeing and learning from everyone around them. And they're so much more motivated, because oftentimes these are students that are stuck with the skill and drill activities. Right. And I'm like, I'm not doing skill and drill. You're going to build a diorama like everybody else. You're going to create, I do like for the biospheres and all that. Like I do an interaction, two spheres interacting, and they have to build a model. And like, I'm like, you're pouring sand and water too, and you're doing the model. And they're like, what? Like, it's not modified. It's not, taken down a level. Like you're going to do the worksheet because this is only for gifted students or something like that. And I work in a title building. And so, historically, like many of our students are not achieving where we would like them to be achieving on standardized testing. So, I think that there's a lot of deficit, like thinking around students in title building, students that are not meeting standards, and we need to move towards more skill and drill. And I've actually moved away from completely the idea of skill and drill. So I fully embrace the project-based thinking around designing curriculum. And all I've seen year after year is more and more students succeeding on standardized testing, and so much growth on iReady and standardized and like those kind of formative assessments, even though I'm only doing projects.
Talk about, this leads into something I was thinking already. Talk about the culture of learning that exists in your classroom and why those scores are going up. because I know why.
Like the belief that I have in my students.
Just the belief you have and the culture of learning that exists in your students and their belief in learning.
Yeah, I think the most important thing for me is that your child loves coming to school. They love learning, right? And so if I create this environment where they are so engaged and motivated and I fill them up with love and affirmations, kids grow, right? But one of the things that I am very explicit in telling my children, aside from that I love them, because I say that too.
I think you mentioned that.
I did, is that I tell them that growth is expected. And we talk about it. And I say, I will center your humanity. I know that a bunch of you shout out, you forget to raise your hand. I know not everybody's the best with turning in their homework. I know that some of you are like mad origamiing, if that's a word. Origamiing.
We'll make it a word.
While I'm teaching, there's a lot of fidgets. I have a fidget library. Kids get up and they blow their nose. I don't have like strict bathroom procedures. I'm pretty much like, if you need to go. Like, let's go one at a time and be respectful about it. But the structure that I have in my classroom is more around don't waste 1 minute in here not learning, right? Like if you show me growth, I don't mind if you're doing origami while I'm teaching or playing with the fidget. I don't mind if you shout out or get excited about something and you want to work with a partner. Or, I kind of like really focus on like, I will let a lot of things slide in my room and like not focus on those behaviors as long as you promise to be focused on achieving. As long as you believe that you're pushing yourself farther than you've ever pushed yourself before. If you really feel like you are growing, right? I will have so much patience for you being a kid, right? And so one thing that my students know for sure is like, I don't like blank desks. Like if they were like doing nothing, I'm like, at least origami at your desk. How can you be doing nothing? Like,
at least pretend to work.
And like my students will sometimes say to me like, well, the other classes get free time. And I'm like, free time? We don't have time for free time. Like I'm doing all these projects. I'm doing all this stuff. Like you're gluing, you're cutting, you're designing, you're creating, you're making. Like every minute is like enriched genius hour.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's not a lot of downtime, I would say, in my classroom. I keep it moving. I keep the projects moving. I do set expectations every day for like how far you need to get on your project, what things need to be done. There is a lot of structure, but the structure looks different. It's not like in your seat, raise your hand structure. It's like facilitated learning experiences with expectations and rubrics and guidelines, but like space for creativity and growth and like no cap on. And then there's never like, you're done early. That's another thing I tell my students. Like, there's no such thing as being done early.
Yeah. I mean, again, I wish we were grade partners in the same school. But
I'll have to come out and visit your school. You got to come out and visit
the
my
structure
school.
piece, my class was to the untrained eye, and untrained eye, I mean by just like someone that didn't really know who I was and what my kids were doing, incredibly unstructured. One of my good friends who taught across the hall teaching fourth grade, he's like, I would describe your classroom like a frat house. He's like, I'm just like, any day I'm just expecting to walk by and just like a parakeet's going to fly out of your room. Yes. I wouldn't even blink an eye. But the structure existed in the learning. And the biggest compliment I could ever receive is when administrators would come into my room, whether it be the principal or district administrators, and they would say, what's going on or what our students are working on. I would always say, just go talk to the kids.
Yeah.
And the reaction I would always get from them is, I cannot believe the conversation I just had with a fifth grader, because that's where the structure is, the way that they could explain what was going on and what they were doing and what they were learning.
And like at a deep level too,
Yeah.
right? With like big words. Like I had this social justice vocabulary word wall on my wall all year. And like the words my kids would use, because like I wanted them, they always want to find unfairness. Like, oh, this is unfair. I'm like, there's a word for that unfairness. Like, what is it? And I remember like they would get into these like arguments, like that was, gender discrimination. And somebody was like, no, it's not. It's sexism, like, and they would kind of go back and forth and like, they would try to figure out like what it was. And I remember one day my superintendent walked in and he pointed to one of the words on the wall. It was like cultural appropriation or xenophobia or something. And he was like, "You guys don't know what this word is." And everybody's hand went up and they were like, "Yes, we do." And it's like those proud moments of like, and they felt so mature because they could have those conversations too. And yeah, it's it's just it's always exciting when I could see that they can take themselves a little further than I thought that we could all go, but like we went there together.
Yeah, I love that. The last thing I want to hit on here with
Yeah.
this project idea, you mentioned it when you were describing your mock trial. How important is the individual reflection at the end or even throughout the project important to the learning experience for students?
I mean, for me, reflection is everything because again, they're in the driving seat of their own learning, right? Um, I don't have a lot of students from individualistic cultures in my classroom. I have a lot of communal culture students. And so we did a lot of things in community with each other because even when I assigned things independently, it was very hard for them to do things independently. They always were like, talking to the person next to them or needing affirmations like you know what I mean or like touching each other and a lot of orality. So I just try to like take what I see from students and figure out how to use it. So if you're talking a lot, we're going to be talking a lot in my classroom, right? If you are working a lot with partners or touching each other a lot, like I'm going to build that in, that touch, the noises, the tapping. I will use all of it and embrace it to like turn it into learning. So I feel like the reflection piece was mostly done in group settings or in partner settings or through some type of orality. But it's ongoing. And like you said, like when projects failed and things like that, I often went to the students and said, tell me where this didn't make sense. Like, what can we do next time? Even like when they took a test, like, or we graded something, like I did a lot of like, we graded right there on the spot in the classroom. I have the students just like flip it over and like write a goal right there on the back. Like when after they graded something, like, what's your goal for next time? And like the goal had to be specific, like read the directions more carefully or slash the trash or like strategies that we were talking about. So I think that that reflection piece is important because again, they're in the driving seat, right? And so if they don't know or they don't have time to like digest the experience, then you're not getting like you know, the full whatever, like goal out of, I don't know what the word I was looking for, but you know what it is because you're
Hmm.
nodding.
Yep. No,
Not getting the full experience,
yeah.
right? The full learning. And so
Yep.
I think that is very important to me. And I was gonna say one more thing, because I was just talking about the orality and things like that. That's very important to me too. I was a student who talked a lot in school. I was a student who walked around the classroom and touched everybody and everything and, wanted to always be in community with my peers and my friends. And when I walked into the classroom in this school 9 years ago and saw that that was a majority of my students, I just thought to myself, like, I was always told I was a problem kid my whole life. And now I get paid to talk all day long in school and wander around a classroom and affirm people and be in community with the classrooms. Like I was never a problem. These were my gifts,
Hmm.
right? And so I think about how the behaviors we see students have are the gifts they bring to our classroom. And that helps me to let go of some of my own frustration. Like my day is never defined by the noise level of my classroom or by my students' behaviors. Um, if I see a student doing a behavior over and over again, instead of like helping them work against that behavior, if the intent isn't harm, right? If the
Hmm.
intent is just
Right.
to communicate, I just try to figure out how to use it. How can I use this behavior? I give this example a lot when I'm doing consulting for school districts, but like you see a kid, he's wandering around the classroom. He's like, what'd you get? What'd you get? What's up? What's up? He's like touching everybody. Like I can play whack-a-mole. Come sit down. Come sit down. Come on, buddy. Come sit down. Get started. Do one, cross one off. Do one, cross two off. Do one, cross three off. Do anything, right? I could play that game for the whole period. Or I can say, hey, come here. I see that you're like really into like affirming your friends today and you're walking around giving everyone high fives. I really appreciate that you're checking in with everyone. Here's the answer key and a pen. you do me a favor? Can you just go check some answers for me? See how everyone's doing? That kid checks 5 papers. He's sitting down and writing down the first 5 answers, you know? He could take the answer key and he can write down all the answers. At the end of the day, I want him writing down. I want him doing the activity, right? And so I think a lot of times we get stuck on like these ideas of like, well, that's cheating. And I need my kids at my desk. And, you know, he can't be wandering around the room. And yes and no, you know, like there's a way that we can sometimes use these behaviors to our advantage and build and bridge the students back to maybe what the classroom behavior is expected at that moment. But also understanding, reflecting as a teacher, like how much time was already sitting? How much time was already a level 0? How much time do they already have to raise their hand? Because having a well-balanced classroom means if we just did a level 0, the next activity is a level 2. If we just did independent, the next activity is partner. If we just sat in our seats, the next activity, lay across the floor, you know, and moving back and forth. And I tell my students that I'm not going to do 2 things in a row, 2 champs expectations in a row. And the kids will say to me, we just were a level 0. I'm like, you're right. This one, even though it's a worksheet, you guys work on it as partners. Just talk it through, you know.
Definitely. One of my most eye-opening experiences with that and understanding just who the students are. My first job was a long-term sub teaching 2nd grade. And I had this student that could not sit still for anything. Yeah. And he constantly would dance, like just dance all the time. And so I positioned his desk into the back of the room because I couldn't get him to sit. I was losing that battle that you'll always lose. And, he's back there dancing away, and I call on him without him expecting it to give me like 2 answers, and he knocks them both out of the park. I'm like,
of course.
Okay, like he is paying attention. He just cannot sit still to save his life, and he's a pretty good dancer, so let's let him go. Yeah. But the other thing that you were saying too about using the students' gifts and using who they are to an advantage. I used a lot of flexible seating in my classroom. They didn't have assigned seats, and when they were doing independent work, they could sit wherever they want, stand, lay, whatever. And I would tell them, like, you need to make responsible choices about where you sit, how you work, who you work with. And in 5th grade, typically the girls could sit next to their best friends all day long and get all their work done, and the boys could not. They would just talk. They would just talk nonstop. And I would say to students that were really the ones like driving the conversation, I would say, listen, you can't control yourself. All you want to do is socialize with your friends. And I am not here to tell you to stop that, because when you're an adult, you'll probably go into sales and you're going to make way more money than I'm making right now using this gift of being social and making small talk and having conversations. So I don't want you to stop. Just don't sit next to your friend when you're trying to do your work. It's not going to work. So I tell
my students the exact opposite sometimes too. I'll be like, if you want to work with your friends, I'm looking at how much work you get done. Right. And so I'm like, I'll like do like halfway through talk about reflection again. If it's a 20-minute activity, like about a third of the way through, I'll be like, you chose your partners. Where are you at? Are you going to keep your partners? How much you've done? And you'll see them be like, come on. Let's get on test. Like, you know, and then we'll go back again. And like, I'll say, when I choose your partners, I pick who you work the best with. If you show me that you work the best with your best friend, I'll pick your best friend every time. You know, and so the kids get really excited about that because they want to prove to me they can work with their friends. And I believe that they can, and they should learn how to work with their friends. And so I do feel like in the beginning, they make a lot of poor choices because they've never been allowed to work with their friends before. They've been divided, and like, teachers have been like,
is she really going to let us sit next to each other?
Yes. And like, that's what I tell them. I'm like, I'm not here to take away your friend. Because again, my class is filled with communal learners. And if I am disciplining one kid up here, I have a kid in the back that's saying, why are you talking to him? He didn't do nothing. Why are you saying that to him? You know, it's not his fault. So like, that group identity is super important to my students. And so if I divide that group identity, I'm not building relations, right? Most of my students are relational. They're not transactional. And so if I want to get them to buy into my system, then I say, I'm going to teach you how to work with your friends, and we're going to make this a productive relationship. And that means not getting frustrated the first 10 times it doesn't work, because by the end of the year, they will be able to work with their friends, you know?
Definitely. So I could talk with you all night, but I do want to be cognizant of our time. I want to jump into our exit ticket, which are the same four questions we ask every guest every week. So question number 1, what is the best thing a teacher can do to make a student's school experience better?
Oh my gosh, I got to pick one thing.
One.
Tell them that they explicitly love them.
Love it.
Care about them. And there's nothing that they're ever going to do that's going to make them stop caring about them. And believe it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got to believe it. Next question. What is the best advice you've ever received, whether it be from a colleague, a supervisor, or even a student?
The best advice. I don't know. That's a really hard one. I'm trying to think about like what kind of advice I've been given. I don't know. I guess the kind of like it wasn't like exactly in those words, but it was around the idea of like, your classroom's behavior does not define your day. Like, don't let it define your day. Mm-hmm. Like, don't go home and like yell at your husband and yell at your kids because your class, like, don't get upset that your class that's filled with kids were acting like kids. Right. Like expect that they're going to act like kids. And, don't let like kid behavior like define like, oh my gosh, like so stressed out about my job. I'm so burnt out because kids were acting like kids. Let that go and just say like, this is how kids act. And like, it's okay. And kind of like not judging your effectiveness, like day by day, like being like every day, like, oh, this day didn't work out. But like, think about your year in like the total of a year, like, did you move the students in the entire year? Did they change the way they feel about school? Like, would you be proud of this year that you've had with these students instead of getting stuck in like the day-to-day grind? That kind of advice I would have to say.
I love that. And that was such an effective answer. You actually answered the next question too.
Way.
That's okay. It's just about the school year goes in waves and there's days and weeks that we struggle. So what can you tell teachers in those moments of struggle to power up? And I think you define it perfectly.
Normalize the journey, right? The journey is a journey, and it's normal in any journey that there's going to be ups and downs. I often equate a relationship with teaching just like a marriage. There's going to be years where you're like, oh my gosh, I've met my soulmate. Teaching is my soulmate. And there's going to be years where you're like barely making it. And you're like, I'm struggling. And the kids, they're always going to be getting like in there, like stirring the pot, just like in your marriage. I'm raising a teenager now. So one of my kids is 14. And so like, they're like in there trying to divide you up and conquer and all those things. And there's gonna be days where you feel like undervalued and underappreciated and wonder if anyone knows how much there's so many chores. Teaching's like a marriage, right? Yep. And if you're going to invest a full 30 years, you have to like also accept that there's a journey and that you have to do work to keep falling back in love with what you're doing. And it's never too late to fall back in love. Just like just like you do in a marriage, you have to keep investing and reinventing and creating that specialness for yourself.
That's a perfect way to put it. So the last one, and we've talked about this a lot tonight. It's easy to fall into facilitating a repetitive classroom. What do you think separates the teachers who are the ones willing to take risks, innovate, and adopt new teaching strategies?
I think they see themselves as a learner in the classroom just as much as their students. So like one of the reasons I love doing projects too is because every time like when students have choice, they choose different things. And so I feel like I'm also on this journey with them, learning about different aspects. And so I'm just as excited as my students for every unit. Like my husband will be like, well, I need you to take tomorrow off. I'm like, I can't take tomorrow off. It's clothespin doll day. Like I love clothespin doll day. We're going to make clothespins of unsung heroes of the Revolutionary War. It's like one of my favorite units that I have the students do. And I love making the little clothespin dolls, the hot glue and cutting out the clothes. And my students are so adorable with all the little accessories they make. And he's just looking at me like, huh? And like, I'm experiencing my curriculum through the eyes of my students, right? And so I'm just as excited as they are. They also don't miss Clothespin Doll Day either, And so I feel like I'm coming to school with the same energy. I'm experiencing it from their side. And when I'm in the learning with them, like then I'm innovating and I'm keeping it creative. I'm keeping it engaging because it's also about me feeling good too. And like we're all doing it together. And so I think that's the difference than, like they're in the driving seat, but like I'm also like in the car with them, which sounds incredibly scary if your kids are driving.
No, that's fantastic. So last question, how can our audience connect with you and follow along with your journey as an educator?
Oh, awesome. Yeah. So I have a couple different things. So as the Illinois Teacher of the Year, I've been doing a lot of World Cafes across the state. So if you want to find out more about how to use the World Cafe model to build belonging in your school district, it's my last name, Mahmood-Illinois Teacher of the Year.com is my website. As a consultant, you can get a hold of me on equityteacherleader.com, as well as my YouTube channel where you want to see the mock trial. You can see it on YouTube at equityteacherleader.com, TikTok, equityteacherleader.com. Most of my handles are at Equity Teacher Leader. And I actually just started my own podcast, elevating teachers across the state of Illinois, which is also called at Equity Teacher Leader. So my whole thing is like, every teacher is a leader, right? And we need every teacher to be an equity focused leader. That's how we move the dial. You need to see yourself as a leader. You need to be treated as a leader. And you need to be teaching with equity in your heart and in your mind. And then we will move our whole entire community forward.
I love that. Thank you so much. Yeah. This has been such a fantastic conversation. I'm very grateful for you and your time. It's very obvious why you're the State Teacher of the Year, and your district is very lucky to have you. Your students and your families are very lucky to have you as a part of their learning community. So I can't thank you enough for your time, and for everyone listening, thank you for tuning in and touching in with this conversation. And I just want to wish you a great year, a great career, and I look forward to staying in touch with you and learning and growing together.
Thank you. Same. Let's keep in touch.
Absolutely. You 100% left us feeling powered up from this conversation. Thanks, everyone.
Love it.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you haven't already, please subscribe on whichever platform you're listening to or watching us on YouTube. Each week, we get to talk to amazing educators who are making a positive impact on the lives of students, their colleagues, administrators, and education as a whole. It's been such a privilege every week to be able to talk to these incredible individuals, learn from them, grow with them, and better myself and all of education through these conversations. If you haven't already, please consider sharing this with a colleague, someone who can benefit and be powered up from the experience of listening to these incredible conversations. Because of Powered Up, we are powering education by empowering you.